And hello, everyone, and welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my amazing co-host,
Stefan Frederick Matzek. That's the pronunciation in Polish.
And who are you?
I am your amazingly handsome husband, co-host, what else? Angel, confidant. I just keep going on and on and on.
Okay.
There's a lot I got. A lot.
You're Angel, you're pushing it with that. I know Mark Clark is probably muting himself so that he doesn't say anything that will upset the apple cart. But we all know, we all know. So, anyways, you really are amazing, smart, intelligent, and you're an attorney, you're a medium, you're my husband, 30 plus years, 31 years, and I couldn't have a better life. How about that?
I love that.
Yeah, and today we're back because our conversation last week, Stephen, about relationships, especially, we talked about building, nurturing, healing, and then letting go. And you came up with this concept of let go, right?
Yes.
Did I get it right?
Yes.
And, our listeners want to know more about what that is. How do you let in and how do you let go? And I think for me personally, I've been sitting with the conversation that we've had because it's a really thought-provoking conversation, and there are some relationships that when we talk about letting go, right? When knowing when it's time to let go, there are some relationships that seem hard to let go, and but I think when you talked about you can't let go before you have to let in first, before you create that opening to let go. I think that that's why our listeners want to know more about these conversations. So that's what today's conversation is about, and I'm excited to have you as somebody who really is an expert, because your spiritual connection gives us, I don't know, it creates an opening for a new realm of possibility that normally we don't all necessarily think about day in, day out. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I agree. I definitely agree. And if this was a number of years ago, I certainly wouldn't be where I am now with the opening of being a medium, or the knowledge of being a medium and seeing and talking to dead people. It's completely changed my perspective, because it's given me the perspective from spirit. It's given me the perspective of what they're seeing and what they're feeling and what they're hearing, and how they interact with us. We always want to know how we can interact with them.
Yes.
But not many people think about, okay, because here you just know this is life, right? And we don't know what's on the other side when we cross or when we pass. And I did a section of one of my courses talking about where they are and what the environment's like, and so yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. It's an interesting conversation.
It's an amazing conversation. But before we get into that conversation, we got to get into what's happening with life in the two of us. And may I begin by saying that you know where I'm going? You have no idea?
I'll know when you say it.
Yeah. Well, may I begin by saying that every day Steven sends me a video of our ducks taking over our pond, and they keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And I swear to God, I think these ducks are they've sent emails, messages to the entire community of ducks in Cape Cod, And all of a sudden, everyone shows up in our little pond behind our house, and I'm blown away, Stephen. All because you feed them every actually not even every morning. He now goes at night to put food at the edge of the pond so that when they wake up in the morning, they have food available. And I get up early to go to CrossFit for the 6 o'clock. And normally when I'm about to leave, I look out, and of course there they are for the most part. But what do you have to say about that?
Scusi? No say. I have to say it's not my fault. It really is not my fault, because there were, this started with 2 ducks, and they, do I hear myself?
Maybe, I don't know. I didn't hear anything.
Yeah. In any case, I noticed that the 2 ducks that were at the perimeter of the pond realized that if they waddle up the little hill on the bottom of our back deck, that there's bird seed that has fallen from some of the birds. And on a side note, some of these birds need manners. I'm just saying. Some are so they're very gentle and they're polite and they take the seeds and nothing falls. The blue jays are like, just stick their whole heads in, and whatever goes in their mouth is good, but whatever falls out of the bird feeder, hey, whatever. And then we have Red, also a little red squirrel that just sits on the feeder and has a buffet. But the ducks come up and they waddle up and they start eating the bird seed. Now I just didn't think ducks would be eating the bird seed, and then I just decided one day, well, you know what, for these 2 ducks, let me just go to the perimeter and put a little bit of bird seed and see if they like it. And they did. And once I started that, then the second and third day and fourth day and fifth day, all of a sudden there were 3 ducks and then 4 ducks, and it wasn't daily. I mean, it was like weekly. It was 2, 3, 4 ducks, and now, yeah, I think the latest count was 12. That we counted.
Yes.
So and no, it brings me.
I counted more than 12. I think we're beyond 12 at this point. So
it brings me the greatest joy, Elix. It does, and the one of the best sounds. And we have a lot of beautiful sounds, because when the peepers come in spring, we have a symphony for months of the peepers. Then the peepers stop singing, and then the bullfrogs start singing. And
yeah.
but the ducks, like you're in the kitchen or you're in your office or me, and all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, you just hear the quack quack quack. It is the funniest, funniest noise. I love it.
Because it almost feels like they have a little bit of an edge, a little bit of an attitude, and so like if they're eating and we open the door to go out, you hear quack quack quack, like hello, you're bothering us. It's really beautiful though. I love it. And these you've done a really good job at taking care of the pond so that they stay here. They've been here year round. Which is mind blowing. Mind blowing. So, and what you feed them is you just feed them bird seed. You don't feed them anything else. Just bird food. No. I mean, I read up, and I think throwing like frozen peas is something good. I know bread is not good for them, so I think bird seed is okay. Well, that's what I'm doing. So and let me just tell you, I am going through bird seed like I have never gone through bird seed before. It's between feeding the birds and now feeding the ducks. As a matter of fact, where that little perimeter is, I think maybe I want to get like a little temporary, like a fence or something, so that when they're eating, they can't be like, caught by a coyote or something. Oh my God.
How's that?
Okay, yeah. So soon, there'll be signs, do not walk, do not, bother the dog. Oh my God, you're out of control.
An electric gate.
Yeah, that too. So anyways, but so that's that. This Saturday you had an amazing event in Massachusetts, and it really was amazing. You want to tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a fundraiser for the One Last Gift Foundation, and it was in Marlborough, Mass. and it was a great group. And unbeknownst to me, how many people I was going to read. Once I get in the zone, I have a time frame, so I blew way past that. Like, I'm talking really past that time frame. And Elix, what did you count? I did like 26 readings.
You read 26 people.
That is crazy.
Hmm.
It's crazy. And already, Amanda, who was there with her mom and some friends. Amanda is the one that does all my computer stuff. She's my assistant, and she's amazing. She already sent me a message saying that the girlfriend that she brought definitely wants to come to an event I'm doing in October, which is in Rainham, which is much closer than Marlborough to the Cape. And it's kind of funny because Amanda just sent a message saying her girlfriend said, "You have to make sure as soon as it is it's out and people can buy tickets, that you tell us or tell me, because I don't want it to get sold out." And it was just really funny because Amanda is like, "I'm the one that puts it out. I can tell you exactly when it's being promoted before all the ad comes out. I do it," which is really kind of funny. And her girlfriend forgot about that, and they just had a good laugh. So
He was. I mean, we don't, clearly we don't have a lot of time, but I think there was so many highlights. But I was blown away by the cat um, reading that you had. But you can talk about that later on.
I can talk about that right now and put it in a 10-second thing.
Go ahead.
A friend of ours was coming. She lost her daughter. Her name is Catherine. That's all I ever heard was her name was Catherine. And on the way en route to the venue, a truck pulls in front of me and Elix, and the license plate is Cat, just Cat, Kat. And when we got there, and of course I read the mom and her mother-in-law, and unbeknownst to me, again, had no idea that was the name they called Catherine, was Cat. It was wild. You don't get any like, so Spirit is incredible.
Yeah, but the most incredible part was that we didn't think that they had come. We thought they were coming, but
Yeah.
but they didn't show up when you started. So I didn't see them. You didn't see them, and this is at the very, very, very end where you all of a sudden I'm looking at you, and it's like you're being dragged back to that last table, and I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? And then all of a sudden you realize that this is for them, and it was Kat who
Yes,
wanted to talk to them.
it
It
was
just,
amazing.
I mean, Spirit is. I never, and I go with you to just about every reading, every group event that you have, and every single time I'm just blown away by it. So, and then the other thing, Stephen, before we do need to go into a break, but I don't want to uh, move on without giving our friends, Mr. and Mrs. Whalen. They're the parents of another friend and client, and we've become close to his parents. And we met them for dinner last night, and it was a wonderful, wonderful dinner. And they were very gracious and generous in taking you and I out for dinner.
They
So
are amazing, and I got to tell you, I laughed a lot with those two.
I think we all laughed a lot, especially at the very end. We won't go into the details of that conversation, but it was funny, funny, funny. So shout out to them. So, of course, we do need to take a break. Well, when we come back, Stephen, we're going to talk about relationships, our relationships in life. What we understand, this is part two of our conversation from last week when it comes to relationships. How do we nurture them, and have thriving connections, that, of course, are going to impact who we are and what we do. And today we're going to focus on letting in and letting go. So we are going to take a small break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the conversation. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, the silly and my amazing co-host,
Stephen the Medium.
Stephen the Medium, who cannot help himself but be silly during the breaks. And today we are continuing with the conversation that we started last week. Let go, let in is where we left out our conversation about relationships last week. And today we lay the foundation for meaningful, lasting relationships. Together we are going to learn how to heal from relationships that no longer served us. And as Stephen put it, how you need to let in before you let go. So that's the gist of our conversation today. And Stephen, let me, this is something that because when we talk about shows and we talked about conversations that we want to have with people, you wanted to talk about relationships. But this is something that came out of our conversation last week. But let me ask you, how let's start with what is a healthy relationship looks like, Stephen.
I'm thinking. I mean, it's hard to for me to put that in, just a very sort of quick way. But I think the thing that stands out when you said what is a healthy relationship is one that both parties are, for the most part, looking after the best interest of the other party. And I think that pretty much is very consistent, and both parties understand that sometimes the relationship's going to be all about one and the other time all about the other, and being okay with that, as long as it doesn't tip the balance to being always about one person and not about the other person. So I think when you have a good relationship, you want the best for the person. It's just like my relationship with Django, our dog, right? I mean, I want the best. I want to make sure he's healthy. I protect him, and so do you. And I think it's no different than having a relationship with a person. I do the same thing for you. I mean, everything I just said with Django, I do for you, right?
I agree.
I this in the morning. I put a bowl down and you eat, and just like Django does.
Again, Mr. Silly. Now,
no, but I think those are the two. I think those are really the two things that when you know that no matter what, it's a good relationship. You've got that person, and that you can share anything with them without feeling judgmental. Or if you get an opinion from them, it comes from the heart. That's all healthy.
Yeah. For me, when I think of a healthy relationship, I think of trust and honesty. That, to me, is foundational. I also think of mutual respect that has to exist. That has to be present in a healthy relationship. That communication, where there's an opportunity to have that open dialogue. That you and I have spoke about this many, many times. It cannot feel one-sided. It has to feel that there's a give and take. And that doesn't mean that you give expecting, right? Because, I for one, I practice the art of giving without ever expecting. And yet, in relationships, there has to be that yin and the yang. You cannot feel one-sided. You can't feel like you're always, the one making the phone call, or you're always the one reaching out, or you're always the one, extending the olive branch. Because I think at that point, that's when it starts to feel that there's something off. You get what I'm saying, Stephen?
I mean, I do, and that's why I said that, if someone's going to give you the truth, as long as it's coming from the heart. And I think when you just talked about, honesty is one piece of this. I mean, I think
Yes.
sometimes honesty also has to be bent a little bit, as long as, again, it's coming from the heart. You and I are dealing with something, with a relationship we have. In this particular case, it may not be the easiest right now to be extremely honest. So, as long as it's coming from the heart and it's coming from a good place, I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, well, but that's what creates the foundation to engage in a communication, to know whether there's more nurturing that needs to happen, more engagement. But at some point, if you keep having that communication and nothing happens, then maybe that's a sign that,
I
that
think
you
so.
need to
Yeah.
let go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, and that's the great part about this conversation is the second part of that statement. If you keep seeing these signs, it may be a time to let go, but if you haven't let in, you're not going to let it go. So,
Yeah.
and that's why we have all these dysfunctional relationships, is because people hang on to them when they know clearly on many levels that it's just not serving them anymore.
Yeah, and and there's different kinds of relationships, right? So
Sure.
so this is not a one-sided conversation, or it's not a conversation. What is that saying, that it's not a one-fits-all kind of
Yeah, right.
conversation? I'm gonna read something, Stephen, on the live stream from Sandra Lugo. She says, "I love the topic, learning to navigate relationships with a teenager, also a granddaughter, and it's for her it's heavy. We are, as parents, forget that teenagers are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get once that box is open." So how would you respond to that, Steve? Because she is right, though.
You mean dealing with a child or your children?
Or children or teenagers, or again, because these are there are different levels of engagement and different relationships.
Yeah, I mean, coming from somebody who represented kids for 20 years, and I had relationships in every aspect of a relationship you can possibly imagine, with teenagers that won't speak to me at all, and some that won't stop speaking to me, and it runs the gamut. And I think it comes back to, as Sandra, that's such a great thing that she brought up. It comes back to where your heart is, and what is in the best interest for your child or relationship. Who still, again, I think it also it's across the board. Is if you are in a relationship, and of course I know that dealing with or having a relationship with a child is different than an adult. I certainly get that, because there's different parameters, and you have to protect them, and and keep them safe, and depending on what age they are. But I think at the end of the day, if you're coming from a place that you're looking at the best interest for, and I think that's catered for whoever the subject matter is, the best interest of your child, the best interest of making sure he or she gets what they need, or try to, sway them in different directions, and just give them everything they need before they become an adult. It's all still based on the best interest of the person, isn't it?
Yeah, I also I'm thinking about a conversation that we had with a friend. I think this past weekend, but I've heard you say this before, which is sometimes it's easier to judge someone based on our own experience, right? What we feel, what we've experienced, how we look, the filter from which we look, what has happened to us. But one of the things that it gave me pause, because it's so important, and I don't think we do it. It's we have to also sort of like learn to look through the lens of somebody else's experience, what that might be for them, because what may be for them may be very different than it was for you, even if we're talking about the same scenario. Do you know what I'm saying, Stephen?
I absolutely. It's one of the biggest lessons I have learned, and just because I say I have learned it doesn't mean that I practice it 100%. Because this time we're all human, right? We all fall down, and we get up. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned is really understanding that we don't know what someone is going through. Whether you think you have every single factual, circumstance or base in your, I know for a fact that, they canceled dinner plans because, another friend's in town and they have to be out, and you are absolutely certain, and you cannot ever be absolutely certain if you're speculating or thinking that, well, listen, everything lines up and it clearly is this, because it's not. It's trying to get into the sense of someone's mind is something that is not, it's certainly not a healthy thing to do, but on the other side, it can definitely damage, how you feel. It can damage relationships and perspective. So it's one of those things that I've learned via doing readings and doing in speaking to spirit.
Yeah, and that brings me to, a saying that I often share with, my clients. That can also lead to a lot of resentment. And resentment is you take poison expecting somebody else to die. But it really is hurting you because you're the one taking the poison. So that's also something good to keep in perspective and keep in mind. But Stephen, we do need to take another break. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, I want to dive into what letting in, because if we need to let in before we let go, what does that entail? What do we need to do, and what does that look like? So let's take a small break, and we'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my silly, yet very smart, and of course, good looking husband and co host.
Who, me? Oh, you're Steven the Medium.
Yeah, right. Stephen the Medium is in the house, and today we are continuing with the conversation that we started last week about relationships. But specifically, we're diving into the concept of letting in so that you can let go. So, with that in mind, Stephen, let's talk about that. So, how did that come about for you, and what does letting in? Let's talk about letting in first. What does that entail? So, somebody listening saying, okay, how do I let in? Because I need to let go.
Well, that's a great question, and the reason why I think I know a lot about and why I like coined this phrase letting in and letting go is that because I didn't know how to let in, so then I couldn't let go. And one thing that I'm glad we're doing the second part to the show because I didn't get to say this, and I think it's important. And you know this, I have kept like everything. Memorabilia that I feel is memorabilia, notes, cards. I have kept everything from when I was, as far as I can remember, like a little kid, up until more recently, because I have purged and started getting rid of things, and I just thought it was just the coolest thing. I would, when we moved to, almost 4 years ago here, I was like going through boxes, which I'm still going through and finding things. And I would send my cousin, Holly, something from when we were little kids, a card from the 70s. And, then someone else I would send, my best friend we've been best friends since freshman year of high school, something when we were hanging together, like in 1989, we were out and some girl left a note on my windshield wiper saying, "Hi, you're cute, call me." And I still have it, right? And it's dated, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's like a hoarder, even though our house is not like the TV show Hoarding. I will tell you that it's not. I'm a very organized person and has a lot of stuff. But I will tell you that just like hoarders don't just do things and create houses that you can't move in. I mean, this is extreme hoarders. Just because they feel like it, there's a prime example of them not letting in, meaning that they're not happy, accepting with themselves. They don't like themselves. That's what this is all about. And you can't let go, meaning let going of the hoarding, unless you let in. And if you don't let in, you don't let go, and you keep everything, right? It's a really good, I think, example. And as I, started getting sort of through this whole process of why I was not accepting myself and really hated myself, my book explains all of that. When I was 8 and my dad, took his life, and Elix has been through 31 years with me. So Elix, you have seen this sort of just come to light. I realized that hanging on to that, really the reason was it was good memories. And because in the present time, I just wasn't happy with myself. I was very judgmental about people, which means I was very judgmental about myself. You can't really, the way you treat people is really the way you treat yourself, right? And I kept things because when I looked back at them, they were memories of what I considered great times. Oh, we're in the mall, we're kids, we just got our licenses, and someone leaves me a little thing on my windshield, and it's just a lot of stuff. And I was attached to this stuff because I was not attached to who I am right now, anything about me. And that's the letting in part, is that you have to be in a place of being 100% accepting of who you are. And I mean who you are right now. I don't care if you're 40 pounds overweight, 10 pounds overweight, your hair's too short, you're too short in your perspective. It does not matter. If you can't get there, you can't 100% get to the second part of that, which is letting go, which is really, both of these formulas, the letting in and letting go, I mean, they're both weighted equally, right? Because if you don't let go, all that energy that you've got around you that's not serving you is going to affect your life. No question about it. And of course, and if you're not letting in, it's the same thing. All that energy coming in around you is going to be just negative energy, and it's just going to just keep having the cycle go that you're going to, treat people the way you're treating yourself and not love yourself. And it's just a recipe for not the greatest life.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing, Stephen, is that really letting in is about allowing positive experiences, emotions, thoughts into our lives, because when you do that, then it creates that opening for new opportunities, relationships, growth, etc., including personal growth. But I'm also thinking, though, that somebody, myself included, at times we know what letting in is, but yet we don't do it because we sort of get comfortable, right, with the status quo. We get, even though we say we don't like it, even though we say we're not happy, even though we struggle, sometimes it's easier because holding on to that sort of like gets you off the hook, right, from having to be responsible for being the one that can do something about it. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, of course it doesn't, but the whole point is, like, you can't let the positive in. You can't do anything unless, as I also call it, going into your basement. You have to go into the basement and look through those cobwebs, and you have to figure out why you're not loving yourself, why you don't wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, you are amazing, or write it with lipstick or whatever you want on the mirror. You're fantastic. You're the best person. You have meaning here. You are just at the beginning stages of your purpose or your passion. Nothing else is going to fall into place for you to be able to let go unless that let in piece happens. And I think you're right, Elix. I mean, I think being familiar and just like status quo, like, listen, I know it's not the greatest, but I'm going to keep it that way. That really is just saying, I don't want to go into my basement. Right. It's been locked for a long time. I'm not going in there because what is that going to like pull from the basement and bring up? How many cobwebs are there? What is down there? Because we haven't been down there for so long, we even forget what's down there. And that's the point, is because for the majority of people, what they think may be down there is not half as bad as what's really down there.
Yeah. So letting in is the going into the basement, because what I'm hearing is going into the basement is being willing to accept, yourself, to embrace the cobweb. What is it that's called, the cobwebs?
Exactly. Just like pushing those cobwebs aside and seeing what's there.
Yeah, and be okay. It's okay. I mean, we all have them, right? We all have that clutter. And it's okay. It's okay to embrace it. It's okay to embrace, the not being okay, or the not having been okay. So, and
yes.
only when you do that is when you then create that opening for letting go.
Well, exactly. And listen, if you don't want to dive into your basement and just, again, take an inventory and really figure out and really, like, I think one of the best examples is, when you get there is when you can go out by yourself and have the greatest day. Just love being by yourself, picking something to do, or just taking a drive, just being by yourself, and hey, this is good. I had a good day. I had a really good day. That just all means that you're deserving, that you love spending time with yourself. You love spending time that's connecting to your soul and not your personality. But really understanding that if you love being with yourself, then you're there. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be in that place every day. There's going to be days that, you still look in the mirror. My hair looks horrible. I get all of that, right? That's being human. But I'm not talking about sort of those, the the superficial kind of stuff that we all have, and which is fine. I just mean that really the meat and potatoes. Just kind of funny being a pescatarian. I use meat and potatoes, huh?
You should say fish, and potatoes.
But really it's really when you get to that place of really understanding who you are, why you're here, that you have meaning and you have things to learn and you have your passions and your purpose, is really where you connect with your soul, and the magic happens in those days that you look in the mirror and like things just, like you have one of those mornings that things just seem like they one after another keep going wrong. It doesn't last long. You come back to, I trust my life. I know my life is working for me, and it pulls you right back in to the positive stuff. And going back to what you said, Helix, is when you stop bringing all the positive energy in, and then you're ready to then move on to the letting go.
Yeah. Sandra here, she's on our live stream. She says, letting go, can let it go be hard? And I would say, yeah, of course it can be hard, but it's necessary. Not everything that we do it's necessarily easy. So there are things that may be difficult, may be hard to confront, to embrace, but they're necessary to break through, to have that that part of life that you may be missing, that you may be wanting. So yeah, so that's what I think. Stephen, what do you think?
I think that what Sandra's question again, or statement, is amazing, but I think that statement about it's hard, of course it's hard, yes, but that statement is coming from the person who hasn't let in yet.
Yes,
That's the whole
yes.
point of this, is that it's too hard to do. How could I do that? That's because you didn't let in. You're not putting yourself as the priority, because I'm telling you, when that happens, it doesn't mean that, you let in and you're in this perfect place. You love yourself, and it's easy to get rid of people that may have been in your life for a long time, but you need to cut the ties. But you don't have that. You will always have maybe that second of, this is going to be hard, and right behind it, it just is replaced with, but I need to do this for myself. I deserve that. I love myself this much that I need to do that.
Yeah, I love it. I deserve it. That is a
Yes.
way to counterpart that fear that, of course, we all deal with. It's a natural part of our natural humanness. Stephen, we
Yes.
need to take a break. Let's take a small break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about. We just talked about letting in, necessary, but then when we come back, we're gonna talk about letting go. How we do that. Okay, we'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my amazing co-host,
Stephen the Medium.
Stephen the Medium. Today, we are having part two of a conversation we started last week about relationships and nurturing, creating, and ultimately, Stephen came up with the concept of letting in so that you can let go of those relationships that are no longer serving you. And that's what we've been talking about, letting in, letting go. So, Stephen, letting go. How do you define letting go? What does that really mean?
Well, I think coming off the letting in the example how I use going into your basement and moving on the cobwebs and seeing what's there. I think once you do that and you're done with the letting in, that really means that your basement now is completely cleaned out of the cobwebs and all the stuff, all the beliefs that were not serving you. And so this room now in the basement is now completely open, and you get this realization: I could make an entire room down here, which would be the greatest, coolest room in the house. And so then you can get new furniture and bring it down, and it's a room you never had, and it just expands where you live, and people love it. It just makes you feel so good, right? That's the same process. Is then when you finish with the letting in piece, then it's the inventory of and it really is not really, I shouldn't say inventory. Inventory is part of the letting in. The letting go, it's automatic, because once you hit the letting in, everything starts falling into place. You see it clearer, and I think the relationships that are not serving you, that should have been cut, the ties should have been cut many, many months, years ago, really stand out now, so that you can take action. And depending on how you want to take action, whether that's something very subtle or something very direct, but it's Elix. It's the letting go part is sort of difficult when you haven't done the letting in, and I mean just to sort of run through your head or your brain. It's like when I do readings, and this just happened in, I don't know, I think it was in Dunn and Sons Elix, that, I was reading this woman, and I brought up a tattoo, and she was very adamant and very clear to me. Oh, that's because I told her father was here. And my father hated tattoos, and I am sure he is having a hissy fit there because, my daughter got two and my son, blah, blah, blah. And I tried to explain, that's your earthly perspective. It's not your dad's. When we're in spirit, he has a whole, there's no earthly stuff. There's no those opinions. There's no this looks better. There's no judgment. There's no hate. There's nothing except love. All he cares about are his grandkids happy because they got a tattoo. If they're happy, he's happy. There's no more of that. But when you're here, and even if I said that to her, which I did, that may not penetrate through her. She may still walk away saying, no, he hated it. Or if she never came to a reading, this woman's always going to have in her head that, oh my God, my father is turning in his grave, and it is the complete opposite. It's what we don't know, right? That's what this is all about. And so it's hard if you haven't let in. It's more difficult to feel, well, I can't do this. How am I going to let go? What's going to happen to them? I just can't. I see them in their, part of my other friends, or it's my family, or what's going to happen on the holiday. All of that is taken care of. And I'm not saying it's easy at all, but it is taken care of when you let in, and then you get to the place of letting go and really understanding that if you're at the place when you've gone through the process of letting in and you know that this person has to go, then they have to go. And the great thing about that, Elix, is that there's so many different ways to do it. It doesn't always have to be cold turkey. In some cases it does, but it doesn't always have to be that. And you can sort of manage it so that there's less hurt maybe on the other side, or less anger on the other side. But again, it's all about you and knowing now that you let in and you are in a place of loving yourself and knowing what's best for you and knowing what's going to help you move forward in life, it just makes it so much easier. And when you're there, you can see exactly what you need to do.
But I do want to go back to something you said about, again, you're using the metaphor of going to the basement, cleaning up the cobwebs and making sure that, the basement is spotless, immaculate, because that only then you can, like you said, you get the new furniture, all of that stuff. But what I think it's also important to remind people is that this is not a onesie. This requires ongoing attention, just like cleaning a house. You don't clean your house once and then you're done. You have to come back and you have to clean it again. So, because our humanness is an ongoing process. So, would you agree with that, Stephen?
I absolutely. I think that is such a phenomenal point, Elix, is that you do, and I think that's why I was talking about that. There are going to be days that you don't feel like you let anything in, but if the foundation of you has, it will all sort of be rectified by what you're bringing up. Is that you have to employ the stuff that you've learned as letting in, and it's like you just mentioned, which I love what you just said. It's like cleaning the house again.
Yeah, and maybe that is a sign when you reach a day where you feel you're not letting anything in. Maybe that is the universe giving you a sign. Oh, it's time to go back. You have to now clean up some new webs that showed up, and you got to go through the exercise again.
Absolutely. And let me just tell you that, talk about not letting in. I don't know this woman from a hole in the wall. Elix and I went to Macy's and I was returning shorts, and the salesperson looked at me and said, even with your gift receipt, the shorts don't have the QR code or whatever that thing that they scan in,
like
right?
a tag, yes.
Exactly. I'm like, so what does that mean? And it's over 30 days, so we can't return them. Well, I'm looking at her like and just not nice. So I said, I want to speak to a manager. And the manager came over, which was completely the opposite of her. And even when the manager was trying to help and Elix was standing next to me, the salesperson was trying to just get her point here. You can't return the shorts, and she wouldn't stop talking. And at the end of the day, because this manager was so nice, I read her. She was in tears with me and Elix there, and I just remember as we were leaving, looking at that salesperson, you could read it on her face. Oh my God, this was a medium, and why wasn't I nice, or why wasn't I just the normal salesperson? I could have get read. You could see it. Now I just finished saying I can't read people's minds. Of course, I can't. But I could feel that energy, and I think that's just a case of, again, not letting in. And being like that, and it's an example for all of us. It's so easy for all of us to be in. I am the king of not letting in, so I know for anyone listening that hasn't, it's doable. And when you start it and do it, your life completely does a 180 in such a great way.
I think that is wonderful. So, Stephen, we only have a few minutes. What would you want our listeners to walk away with? If there was like one thing they hear today that is going to help them, really begin the process of letting in, cleaning that basement so that they can let go of people, relationships, or anything that's no longer serving them.
I think a very easy, quick way is just take a look at your life and see in particular days, how you're reacting to things, or if you're with somebody that you spent a time with and you come home and you're drained, just take a look at what's happening. It's the best way to figure it out of how much you have let in and how much you need to let in. It's how you're reacting to things. And if you're hot-tempered or you fly off the handle very quickly, that you've got to start looking at your inventory and what's happening inside, and you have to be prepared to go into the basement to do that.
Yeah, and again, just a reminder, because somebody on the live stream just said that it's sometimes difficult for people to trust the process, but that's part of letting in, right? That's what
I
you
love
said.
that.
That's
I love that. Yeah, I love that that person just said that, because absolutely, without the trust, you're not letting in.
So right there, that's a really important message to walk away
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
I love these conversations, but then again, those are conversations. Honestly, Stephen, you when we do this radio show, it's like, like when you and I have dinner every night. These are the
Yes.
conversations that we're having every day.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we are inviting you to our table to join us in our conversations, and I hope that you appreciate being part of our conversations. And I hope this was just as valuable to all of you as it was for myself, and I'm sure for you, Stephen, as well.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah. So we're at the top of the hour, Stephen. Quickly, how can people get a hold of you? Anything else that you're doing in the upcoming days that people should know about?
No, just go to StephenTheMedium.com. On my website, you can book appointments. You can see what my events are. And in social media, I'm Stephen the Medium also. And a big shout out to our really good friend Billy, who's coming over tonight for dinner. It's his birthday, so happy birthday, Billy Boy.
Happy birthday. And for me, if you're not following me, you better be following me at Coach Helix anywhere on social media. And we'll be back again next week with an amazing conversation. We'll see you then. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone at WARA 1320 AM. And for you, our listeners, you are the most important part of this whole show. Thank you for joining us every week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.